Let's ask CPA and Geltrude and company founder Dan Geltrude. Dan, great to see you. Thanks for coming in. So how and when are Americans actually going to feel the effects of this rate cut?
Well, let's be clear about something here. What people are feeling the pain of is from inflation. A rate cut is not the magic pill that's going to deliver that. Over the last 3+ years, inflation is up over 20%. So now it's getting close to that 2% target, right, David? So what this cut is meant to do is to stimulate the economy. Why? Because the economy is slowing based upon job numbers, unemployment numbers. So what's happening here is make borrowing cheaper so that businesses can start to get things moving, hopefully creating jobs. But listen, the Fed has been behind the curve this entire time, David, and now they're trying to catch up. Probably still going to be behind the curve for a while.
But this is just for folks to know, this is a huge rate cut by Federal Reserve standards. I mean, usually it's done in the middle of a crisis, like in the 2009 financial crisis or during the pandemic. I mean, what does Powell see, unless he's doing this politically for political reasons to help the Harris campaign? What does he see that concerns him so much?
Well, politics aside, David, as you just said, he is seeing something which everyone is feeling, which is the economy is weakening. So now it's that game of catch up. And that's not the position the Fed should be in. If they're going to start a cycle of rate cuts, which is what everybody believes is going to happen, they jump to a 0.5 point because they're behind already.
All right. Well, meanwhile, the government is still spending like a bunch of drunken sailors. And we saw that in these extraordinary August figures. We had a $380 billion deficit for that month alone, for August. And look at this. We only had $307 billion coming in revenue. In other words, we are spending more than twice as much as we are bringing in. Try doing that at home, Dan.
Well, it doesn't work. And the difference between all of us at home and the government is the government prints more money.
And that means inflation, right?
Well, exactly. It means inflation because you are flooding the markets with more money, which right away will stimulate inflation. And that's what we've been seeing. Look, all this talk about all the reasons as to why we're in an inflationary period, what really stands out most is government spending. If they stop the spending, inflation will roll back.
Yeah, but we're going in two different directions. I mean, that's my point in bringing up the deficit figures, is we are doing the government, the government that's in power right now, the Biden-Harris administration, is doing things that cause more inflation, while the Federal Reserve claims that inflation is easing enough to lower rates that much. It doesn't seem to make sense.
No, it doesn't. I've used the analogy on this point before to say it's like having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. And you know what happens, David? You go round and round in circles. It doesn't work. So you're absolutely right. You have two parts of the government going in opposite directions. So how are you ever going to be able to resolve this issue of inflation?
Well, and the other thing is, if we are, some people suggest that we may actually be going into a recession, that's what is the greatest fear of Powell. That's why he lowered the rates so much. If that happens, you know what happens with every recession. The government makes less revenue because there's less economic activity. That means these deficits are going to grow even more. Already we're paying, what is it, over $1 trillion servicing that debt in payments to the bondholders.
That's exactly what happens. And you know what people don't talk about with interest rates coming down is borrowing becomes cheaper also for the government. So now you have more incentive that the government can spend more. So again, when we look at everything the government is doing, it doesn't make sense. Stop spending.
Yeah. It's very simple. I mean, it is very simple. It doesn't make it easier, but it's very simple. Dan, thank you so much. Dan Geltrude, appreciate you coming in. Coming